Welcome back to How to Craft Fair. This is episode 7 in the channel member Q&A series. In this series, channel members are able to submit questions to me, and hopefully I can provide some tips and information on to help resolve their problems. If you're interested in submitting questions or being a channel member, click on the join button below, and there's a whole bunch of information on all the perks that come with being a channel member. But as far as today's questions, I'm super excited for both of them because they're covering topics that we really haven't touched on much on the channel so far. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first one is going to come from Eliana from Ira Cosmetics. And she asks, can you provide tips on dealing with difficult customers as a craft fair vendor? So we've talked a lot about how to communicate with shoppers as far as like sales strategies on the channel, maybe some things to look out for. But we really haven't touched on too much with difficult or, even outright rude shoppers. So definitely a good topic. I'm going to break this down into 5 different tips. And the first one is that you should stay calm. Take deep breaths and avoid knee-jerk reactions in the heat of the moment. So sometimes when I get into a difficult situation, it's easy to just react quickly. And that's something that you don't want to do. You want to just take a breath and kind of center yourself, relax yourself, and be able to just absorb your feelings so that you can respond in an appropriate manner. Because the reason why you want to do this is because you don't know if other shoppers are around, in earshot of what's being said. So even though this interaction with this particular shopper who might be rude, who might just say something ridiculous, even though that's obviously not going to lead to a sale because they're obviously not, happy in the first place, you don't want to blow an opportunity of somebody who might be in the area, okay? So it's important to just take a moment, take a deep breath, and kind of just stay calm and stay centered. Okay, so the second tip basically is paired right along with the first tip, and it's to avoid confrontation. So if somebody comes up to your booth and they're being rude or they have some sort of snarky comment, just let it slide. At the end of the day, they're not worth it, and they're basically just making themselves look like a clown, okay? So take the high road. And another reason to avoid confrontation is because that can linger into your next few interactions with shoppers. Okay, so it's pretty rare for people to get like amped up and to get into some sort of confrontation and then to be able to like immediately come off of that. Okay, so that's the biggest reason why you want to avoid confrontation, is because you don't want that to basically lead into your next interactions with shoppers and possibly blow those sales as well. Okay, so again, this person, they're not worth it. Let them say whatever they want to say. Forget it. Just forget about it and don't even let it affect you. Now, my third piece of advice for this particular situation is if they get aggressive in any way, and I'm not talking just physical, okay? So if they start raising their voice, if they start, using cuss words or whatever, anything like that where they show aggression, you need to definitely let the organizer know as soon as possible and the vendors around you. Okay, so hopefully the vendors themselves can kind of start spreading the word that, hey, this person over here, they were an absolute jerk. And that can get around the show even before it gets to the organizer, okay? But like I said, definitely let the organizer know as soon as you possibly can and help to spread the word, okay? Because these kind of people, you just don't know, okay? I mean, you're dealing with the general public, so, not everybody has their act together. So you just want to keep everybody informed around you, and the vendors around you are definitely going to appreciate that, okay? Like, they're going to appreciate the heads up. So like I said, let the vendors know, let the organizer know as soon as possible when you see aggression. Okay, so kind of changing gears here, but it also could help to avoid some rude or confrontational interactions is to have signage at your booth. So signage definitely helps. You can eliminate the number of things that people can possibly complain about by having signs that clearly state your accepted pay methods, your prices, your return policy. That's a big one, okay? So including if you don't accept returns or if all sales are final. So you want to even have a sign for that as well, because again, that's just eliminating one thing that somebody can possibly come back to you with and complain about. Okay, so think about your signage. Think about ways that you can incorporate signage into your booth that's not only informative for great guests into your booth, but also as a preventative measure for avoiding confrontation and any kind of weird moments between yourself and the shoppers. Now, this last piece of advice for this particular question might be the most difficult as a vendor to practice and to kind of get down, but I highly, highly recommend it. So it's actively listening, even if someone is expressing themselves in an unhealthy manner. So you want to avoid discrediting what people have to say simply based on their tone, their demeanor, or their delivery, the way that they're saying it to you. Because if 10 people say that your prices are high and no one is buying anything at your booth, but one people expresses this in a way that you didn't like, you shouldn't get hung up on that one person simply because of the way that they said it, okay? Because at the end of the day, there's valuable information in there. It's just not being delivered in a great manner or in a way that you'd appreciate, okay? So that's a really, really important learning tool to utilize as a vendor, is just to listen to everything, okay? So even if you don't like it, try to just push that part of it aside, but don't push away everything that everybody is saying, okay? So there's a really important distinction there, and this is a fun thing to practice on, because I guarantee you that most craft fair vendors, and let me know in the comments if you've experienced this, if you've heard somebody kind of mock your prices or say, oh, that's a little bit too high or something like that. Let me know in the comments if you've heard that at your booth. I think most of us have. So just try to kind of take out the tone, take out the delivery, and not be affected by that. Don't take that personally, okay? But just listen to the message that people are saying, good, bad, neutral, positive, negative, okay? So use these 5 tools to try to A, avoid confrontation, and B, just take what information you can get out of every interaction, no matter how it's delivered. Okay, so the next question is from Shayna with Sunny Day Moments. And her question is, as a fan of pop culture, I would love to create and sell products related to many of the following genres: Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, May the 4th, Nintendo, Pokemon, and the San Diego Comic-Con. What are your thoughts on the legality of creating handmade items based on or inspired by licensed characters and brands? Also wondering where items made from licensed character fabric would fit into all this. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to cover is what licensed character fabric is. Okay, so everybody might not know, but basically, if you take a look at these examples right here, it is patterned fabric that has logos or characters that we're familiar with. Okay, like basically pop culture items printed on fabric. And the use of these, a lot of people have talked about this. A lot of vendors kind of debate upon this. And I'll give you my answer, and it's not going to be an ideal answer, but I would use extreme caution when selling items that feature licensed characters and brands. Okay, so some of the brands actually listed above are notorious for seeking out crafts and materials or creations that feature their characters or their brands, and they're not being sold by them. Okay, so like I know offhand Nintendo is pretty aggressive with seeking this out. Disney, I've also heard a lot of people talk about Disney as well. So it's basically a slippery slope, and you want to think about it this way. Basically, just put yourself in this mindset. Those brands don't want anyone selling products that could be mistaken as something they're selling. Okay, so if you create something that a shopper would look at it and say, oh, this actually looks like it could come straight from Disney. It could come straight from Nintendo, Star Wars, whatever. If products are being sold with their characters on them, they want to be the ones making the money. Okay, so that's pretty much the mindset that you want to be in, and you want to avoid all of that, okay? Because I know that, again, it's not an ideal answer, but it's truly the only way to be a 100% safe bet as far as not getting any kind of like cease and desist letters or things that you just you don't want to go down those types of roads. Okay. So now when we start talking about like alternatives, okay, it's like, how can I do this where maybe I can feature something that like hints at a certain brand or character? One way to draw up some interest based on a hot topic is to say a new collection of your work is inspired by the topic that you can't outright reproduce without worrying about just a lot of bad stuff. So perhaps there's like some color combinations that you can work with, but you don't use the actual logos. Okay, so you can kind of like do collections that are inspired by a certain topic, but it's not necessarily just an actual reproduction that could be mistaken for materials that are produced by the brand itself. Okay, so that's like the important distinction right there. But at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, is it worth it? Definitely not if it comes to using actual licensed or trademarked images. Okay, so I'll say straight up that part is definitely a no-no. So we kind of talked about like the character fabric. I would avoid that straight up, okay, because that's using the actual images and the trademarked branding. So that I would not do at all. Now this is okay. I'm going to make like a little side point right here. I'll continue on. Okay. But I want to make a side point and say that if you're creating something and then say, for example, you're the type of crafter who, yes, you go to craft fairs or you have like an Etsy shop, but you also create gifts that you give to relatives or friends for birthdays or Christmas or whatever. That's a totally different story. I mean, you can create whatever you want. That's why the fabric exists in the first place, right? So you can create whatever you want and give it away, so you can give it as a gift. But as far as like profiting off of other trademark branding, that's kind of what we're talking about here. Okay, so I just wanted to make that side point and say that you can create things and give them away as gifts, but as far as profiting off of them, that's kind of what we're digging into. So jumping back into the point really quick, you can create like the vague materials, but again, is it worth it? So the actual use of trademarked images, no, definitely not. I would avoid that. And is it worth going the vague route? Okay, so perhaps using only associated colors. Well, basically you have to ask yourself, like, how many shoppers are going to make that correlation that's going to incentivize a purchase in their eyes. Okay, so let's just say, for example, I don't know, Mario, right? Like Mario Brothers. So Mario wears like the blue and orange suit, and then Luigi has the green and blue suit, right? Like, how many people are going to like understand that distinction? Or even if you take like Lord of the Rings, well, like how many things can you do that are vague, but people are still going to understand that it's inspired by Lord of the Rings? So like, you really got to start thinking about this from the perspective as an artist of, is it worth it? Is it actually going to sell if it's vague? Are people going to understand that, oh, this is like inspired by this? You know what I mean? So if you do go this route and make something vague that is kind of protected by branding, where you're not outright using images and characters and things like that, you can say, hey, this, collection was inspired by, but it's not like outright using the branding. I think most vendors feel a little bit safer from any kind of negative feedback from a brand itself when they go the vague route and they say it's inspired by. But even that, I don't know. I mean, is it really guaranteed? Who knows? I don't know if anybody can answer that. But for this particular question, viewers, I want your feedback on it. So please, if you have any experience on this particular topic, comment below. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you've had experiences, especially please comment if you've ever been reached out to by a brand and they've said something to you about selling something that is possibly trademarked or licensed. I hope that this becomes a collaborative effort on this particular question, because trust me, I did a lot of research on this particular topic, and really the only concrete thing that I can find that is like a surefire yes or no thing is that a lot of people say, and after a lot of research, you don't want to just outright use trademark images for anything, anything profitable. Okay. Because again, it just circles back to that point of if you're basically intentionally or unintentionally, that's very important too, intentionally or unintentionally deceiving a shopper into them thinking that a product could be produced by the owner of the trademark, the owner of the brand in itself, that's already in violation of trademark. Okay, that's the reason why trademarks exist, is they're there to protect the brand who created those things. Okay, so at the end of the day, they are really the only ones that can make direct profits off of their own creations. So that's why this is such a huge slippery slope, in my opinion, and it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it to me. But again, let me know the comments. This was a really tricky question to navigate, but it's something that a lot of people have asked about. So I'm glad it kind of came up in the Q&A series, that we can cover it like in a more open dialogue and hopefully get some collaboration on in the comments section. So fantastic questions this time around. I know there was only 2 of them, but I think these were both really good questions and topics to cover, because every vendor should be educated on these particular topics. So thank you for submitting them, Shayna, Eliana, really appreciate it. Again, if you want to become a channel member, there are a lot of perks that come with channel memberships. You can get a craft fair booth review, so you get a free booth review. Submit questions for the Q&A series. Occasionally I'll post things in the community tab right here on YouTube just for channel members. Access to all my free resource guides on Etsy. Just a lot of perks. So go ahead, hit the join button, at least take a look at what it all entails, and you can make that decision for yourself. So thank you so much for checking out this video. Thanks for the questions, and we will see you next time. Hope you have an absolutely excellent day.